Mr. Olmos, welcome.
It's a pleasure.
My first question is, how would you describe the state of Hispanic education in this country?
Close to tragic. The educational process in this country is European-based. Therefore, 96 to 97% of all the history that is taught from the first grade through the 12th grade happens to be European contributions in the United States of America. There's nothing wrong with that, except that when you have a one-course diet of anything, say for instance you get one vitamin, vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, whatever vitamin you take, and that's the only vitamin you get from the age of 5 through the age of 18, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, granted, in some regions you might get a little bit of a change in the diet, but not enough to really make a difference. No, our diet needs to be well-rounded. We have to know what the indigenous people contributed to this country. We have to know what the Asian Americans have contributed, the African Americans, and especially Latino Americans, what they have given to the culture. And they should not start, with Chicano studies in college. It should start in the first grade. A well-rounded diet of the contributions of the cultural dynamics that have made this country great, and get away from just the European American based diet that we have. And until we do that, our children of color are really in a sad shape. And self-esteem, self-respect, and self-worth starts at home, but it continues through the society that you live in. And right now, our children of color are not getting very much of a self-esteem and self-respect when it comes to the educational processes that are being held on a national level.
Okay, now you mentioned home. Are Latino parents as involved as they could be in their children's education?
I think all parents could become even more involved. And I think it becomes through example, not by trying to tell them. You have to read books in front of your children. You have to read books, not tell them you read a book. It's one thing to take a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old and read to them until they're 7 or 8. But it's another thing for that 2 or 3 or 4-year-old to watch you read a book after you finished reading them a book.
Now, are Latino children entering elementary school as well prepared as they could be?
I think that they try to be ready to come into school. And Latino children are like any other children. They like to have fun, enjoy themselves. And sometimes the educational process in the home is not set on ABCs, rather on values and on relationships and on being kind and courteous. And great sense of value comes to the Latino community. And so they go to school to learn how to read and write and do arithmetic. And I can honestly tell you that they come to school with a great sense of understanding of other people, and they're courteous, they're really willing to learn, and they're ready to learn. The problem is that most of the time when you get in there and you start to learn about other cultures, which there's nothing wrong with that, you must have at least a little bit of your own culture involved in that.
All right. And do you think we are doing enough to educate Latino children in this country?
Educating Latino children in this country is difficult because, like I've said, the history of this country is not conducive to teaching Latino children. It's conducive to teaching European American children all about what the contributions have been about European Americans. But the sadness about this is the fact that in the essence of what we do as a society, we have not really become diverse in our history, in our sense of balance. And history, where we come from, really tells us where we are, and it really indicates where we're going.
Okay, now, why are we seeing such a high dropout rate among Latino students in this country?
It's been ongoing, and I could say that it's too difficult to try to say why there is such a dropout rate, why 52% of all the children don't graduate from high school, knowing full well that the largest majority, over 50% of the children 5 years and under, are Latino in this country. That's a statistic that really drives people into terms saying, wait a minute, could that be true? Yes, it is. It's very true. And I can honestly say to you that the future lies in us trying to figure out how to keep these kids in school. Because if you think the Valdivia oil slick was an ecological disaster, you wait till you see what happens with children that don't have even a high school education coming into the society. It's going to be very difficult for the society to sustain.
Okay, let's talk about the economic impact of poorly educated students on the Hispanic community.
In any community, poorly educated people tend to become something that drains the system instead of adding to the system. And the sadness is that we don't seem to understand that in order to stop people from dropping out, we have to give them a reason to stay in. Now you can say, well, the fact that we're giving them an education, that should be enough to drive them to stay in. It is for the first 5 or 6 years. They're not dropping out in the 5th grade or the 4th grade. They're starting to drop out in the 9th, 10th, 11th grade. That's why they start to drop out. When they've had it up to here, you know, with an understanding that doesn't deal with them. If you give a person a reason to have an interest in the stuff that you're teaching them, and I don't mean, if you take a lot of teachers here in Denver, you're going to find the teachers saying to you, I teach my children about Chicano studies. I teach them about Cesar Chavez. I teach them about all the great authors and all the great writers. That isn't what I mean. Great that you teach them about being Chicano, but how about teaching them about what the Puerto Rican is like, what the Cuban is like, what the Guatemalan is like, what the Argentinian is like, what contributions have the El Salvadorians given to this country? And I'm not talking about the ones that are just getting here. I'm talking about the ones that were here 300-400 years ago. What, you think that people only migrated here in the last century? This is the sadness. People have migrated to different parts of the world since the origins of the human species 7 million years ago. We started our really strong thrust to look for another place to live 100,000 BC. That's when we barely started to leave the African regions and move into Asia. And then at 500,000 BC, we started to go towards Europe.
A question about leadership, okay? You're receiving the Sol Trujillo National Leadership Award. How does it make you feel? And also, what are we doing to develop more Latino leaders in this country?
It's an honor and a privilege to be receiving this award. Sol Trujillo and his family have given so much, not only to this community, but to the entire country. And by touching this community and by giving to this community, they're touching hundreds of thousands of people into the future. Sol Trujillo has been a leader, not only a corporate leader, one of the top corporate leaders in the world, but he's also been a great leader in advancing the society we live in. And Latinos should be very proud to have Sol Trujillo as a Latino living in this world today. I thank him 1,000 times over. Developing leadership is by example. Everyone has the opportunity to become an example for the youth, and by showing them leadership, they will learn how to lead.